Hey everyone, it's Eski once again with some more role knowledge. Today we'll be covering the role of tank and how it might be one of the most important roles in Overwatch. Not only during the current Overwatch 2, but also during previous Overwatch release. So without further distraction, let's get into the warm-up. Today I'll have you working on your Winston mechanics using the code BSON1. We'll be focusing on barrier dancing, or moving in and out of your bubble to avoid damage, and juggling, using Primal Rage to keep hitting someone without letting them hit the ground. Practice both of these for about 10 minutes each. The main thing that tank does is control space. Whether it's to capture an objective, get your DPS and supports to better positions, or for your own safety, space is important to make sure that you aren't eliminated by the first engagement. Tanking isn't solely about the HP pool, but most importantly, the space you create. There are several tanks that all play the game completely different, so the first thing to do is to understand how each hero works individually. In the practice range, try to get a feel for how each tank works and think about how these characters maintain space for your team for about 3 to 4 minutes per hero. When Overwatch first started, there were two tanks known as a main tank and an off tank that would often support each other in their ability to maintain and gain space. Now since there's only one tank, it becomes a bit more difficult to accomplish. So in order to combat this, the use of corners, like I've talked about in previous videos, is really important to making sure you last as long as possible in the front line. For the next 1 to 2 quick play games, use natural cover and corners to push the fight in your favor. Using this cover correctly will make your survivability skyrocket, not only because your supports can see you, but also because the other team won't be able to shoot you through a wall. Probably one of the most important things to look at while you're playing is how well you are keeping your resources when you're pushing. What do I mean by this? An example would be Rein's shield. It has a limited amount of damage it can take before it breaks. Being able to control when you're pushing, when you have maximum amount of resources, makes it easier to do the plays that you want to do. For this next exercise, play the next 2 to 4 quick play games and really focus on how much you're using your abilities and when you're using your abilities, especially when you're pushing to make space. How this will look on multiple tank characters is that you should have all your abilities ready to go when you're trying to push. Since we aren't particularly focusing on one type of tank, make sure to spend some time in the practice range getting used to how each character works as well as trying to understand each ability. This way you're able to pick any tank that you feel is needed for your team to succeed. The reason why we use corners on almost every hero is because without these corners or cover, we would more than likely take way more damage than we would like to. So being able to take our fights as well as taking our space more effectively by using this cover makes things way easier. To continue from the last point, having all of your abilities, health, and shield health is extremely important in order for you to have the most success in winning your fights. Make sure before you push up to the next corner, or wherever you're trying to hold, that you have enough resources to get yourself and your team there. Now that we're at the end of the workout, let's cover what we've learned today. There are many tanks that all have different ways of being played, as well as abilities that allow them to do certain movements and damage. So understanding how each of these heroes work is half the battle. Not to sound like a broken record, but using cover and corners to absorb damage that's in front of you helps maintain your space, as well as gaining space if you go from cover to cover. This is because we will take less damage naturally if the other team is unable to see us. And lastly, cooldowns and abilities, especially on tanks, are important when you want to take space or engage in fights. We must have as many resources as we can in order to make the fight we are going into as advantageous as possible. And with that out of the way, that is the end of the workout. This has been Eski with Game Gym. Remember, if you want a VOD review, talk Overwatch, or just hang out, make sure to DM me on the Game Gym Discord. I hope to see you in the next video.